Hey there. One thing I've been thinking a lot about recently is how to give better feedback. This is something that I see people not doing that well. I myself have gotten feedback in the past at work or in relationships where I hear what the other person wants as an outcome. For example, be more autonomous, be more confident, be more organized. But really, what they're doing is defining an outcome that they want rather than giving you a way to get to that outcome. And as a result, even though you hear the feedback and you want to do better, you don't necessarily know how to do that. Um, so I've spent a lot of time thinking about what is a way of giving feedback where it is more actionable. It is actually something that you can do. It is a change that you can make. And there's a few things that have worked for me, that have worked well over the years. And I think I really boiled it down to two main aspects. So the first is the trigger, and the second is the action. So the idea is you want the person to be able to notice a trigger in the moment, notice that this is the right moment for them to take some specific action. Uh, let's take an example to make it a little bit more concrete. So, for example, um, let's say you want somebody to be more autonomous, be more agentic, take more agency in their life, be more in control of their own destiny. How can they do that? Well, the trigger would be to notice a moment in which they can impact the outcome of what they want to control. So, for example, you want to be assigned some work, or you want to, say, pick a restaurant for where you want to go, or you want your friends to do an activity together. So, first, if you're having a conversation with somebody else, you would notice during that conversation, hey, we're talking about what restaurant we should pick. And I have this feeling, I have this desire that I want it to be a specific cuisine or I want it to be a specific restaurant. So that's the trigger. And it sounds obvious, but it is surprising how many people just watch the trigger sort of just whoosh by them without actually taking some action there. So that's the first thing. Just recognize what is the right moment. When do you need to take action? For work, it might be when you're having a conversation with your manager and they're talking about the work that you should be doing. Now, of course, I understand you might not always have control. There might be places where somebody just forces a decision on you, which still, look, that is still the trigger. When you are being assigned work or a decision is being made in front of you, when opinions are being raised in front of you, those are the times. That is the time when you should be thinking, hey, I need to have my voice added to the pile as well. And then the second part is the action. So if you see a decision being made, the action you take is let your voice be heard. So you say, I understand that we are making a decision right now. I have an opinion on that as well. What I think should be done is this. And in that way, you can actually try to impact the decision in some way. What you don't want to do is have the thought of helplessness, feel the lack of control, and then live with the resentment that comes from not being heard or not being able to add your own take on the issue. Um, so, trigger an action, right? Let's maybe take a different example for this as well. Let's say you say to someone, be more confident, speak up more. It's the same thing. The trigger is noticing when opinions are being said, and then the action is to say your opinion out loud. I think for a lot of people, it comes down to feeling like their opinion might not be valued, or Other people might think their opinion is not important. But I'll tell you this, you would be surprised. You would be surprised at how much other people are willing to hear you out. And if you see that every time you do make your opinion heard, the other person is not actually hearing you, whether it's your manager or somebody in your life, that is at least information you can use to realize that that might not be a situation you might want to stay in, or that might not be a situation that you want to continue to engage with, which can then let you take other actions to get yourself out of that or manage it in a different way. Another classic example might be to tell someone to be more organized. And it's admirable to say that to someone, but it's again not very actionable. So let's again think of trigger and action, yeah? So the trigger would be you have a complex thing you're trying to do that has many different steps, and you find yourself being confused or not knowing what to do next or feeling overwhelmed. We've all felt this feeling of feeling like there's too much to do. So that's a trigger. And usually you might just let that trigger cause you anxiety and just spiral with that anxiety. But what you want to do instead is just train your mind. Every time I feel overwhelmed, I'm going to sit down and do an action. I'm going to make a list of all the things that I need to do. Maybe I already have a list of things to do, and one particular step in that list is causing me anxiety. So in that case, let's break that step down into further steps, further sub-steps, so I can feel like I have more control in the situation. And this, again, might sound very obvious, but you would be surprised at how many times we just notice the feeling, we let the trigger pass by. We even sometimes think of the actions we might take, but we don't actually take them. And the more you can train your brain to follow this trigger action pattern, the more you can not have to live with that anxiety or feeling of overwhelming. The more you can notice this arising of strong negative emotions when you're feeling overwhelmed by something, but then instead of just sitting with those emotions, maybe even thinking of an action but not taking the action, the more you can not have to live with it, the more you can actually overcome it. And you might say, duh, wow, thanks, genius. Like, of course I know I have to do stuff. It's the inertia of me not being able to do it. The anxiety can be crippling. I don't know how to actually take that action in the moment. And what I would say to you then is, it's reps. It's really like building a muscle. Your brain is a pattern machine. It likes to do the same thing over and over. And if what you have been doing is noticing, thinking of an action, but not actually following through with the action, the more your brain is just going to do that again and again. So really the answer there is do it once, no matter how overwhelming it feels. The next time you do it, you recognize the trigger, you take an action, you recognize the trigger, you take an action. The more it will become normalized, the more your brain will be trained to continue to do that. Let's take one more example. So, you might tell someone you should have more hobbies. You should do more fun things. And again, it's easy to say, but what is the trigger and what is the action? So the trigger might be boredom. The next time you're sitting somewhere in your house, you have some free time, you feel bored, that's a trigger. Boredom presents itself as this listlessness, restlessness. Next time you notice that, pick a hobby, reading, maybe playing a game, learning a skill, and do it for 5 minutes. And the more you can make it easier for yourself to take a small action, every time you notice the trigger, the more you're going to train yourself to do that rep every time. And one thing I find that really helps is to make a list. So if you make a list of the different triggers that you need to notice, What do I do when I feel overwhelmed? What do I do when I feel a sense of control slipping away from myself? What do I do if I feel lonely? And then have a list of actions that you can take. Pick up a book and read it, call a friend, reach out to a friend, make my opinion, make my voice be known. Um, the more you can then actually take control of your own destiny. So, the main thing, takeaway, would be start recognizing how you're feeling in the moment. Use that as a trigger to then think about what steps you could take to ameliorate that feeling you're feeling, and then take a tiny version of that step immediately and just do that. Train yourself to do that every single time. And the more you do it, it doesn't matter what type of thing you're trying to do. So, again, what I'm trying to give you is a framework for generalized feedback, really. Um, and I hope that's helpful to you. Hope you have a good rest of your day.